What we see here is a manga author getting beat up by an invisible girl, but what we truly see is some social commentary that all manga authors across the globe are crying out saying, why are our fans beating us up with their unrealistic expectations? But for real, this episode was a really unexpected one. Walking in, I assumed Class B would probably end up winning. It felt like with that whole mushroom plan, it felt like kendo, it just was good leadership, good coordination, and while Class A was clearly skilled and more experienced, I felt like the combination of abilities meant they were going to win. Then while watching this episode, I was convinced that was true. But once the night vision goggles, once the disinfectant spray got brought into the equation, I was like, oh, they're going to win. Which makes sense, given their skill set, given how they were able to use Momo's leadership to their full potential. Makes total sense, and I'd be perfectly fine watching my boy Tokoyami and the rest end up winning. But to see Class B actually succeed was an unexpected win. While my perspective and my assumptions were they were going to win at the beginning of this episode, they naturally made me drop my guard saying, no, of course, the Flying Birdman is going to kick everyone's ass at the end. I did not even consider that we could have an ability like Mushroom, which is a very annoying ability and it's useful, especially in combination with others. But I didn't expect to see my boy kneel over, having trouble breathing, as we have, I would argue, the most villainous scene that this training program has seen to date. And there's been plenty of abilities, from brainwashing to now mushrooms in the lungs, that have gave me a villainous aura, but it's a good thing it's on a hero side. But I was not expecting that, but I have to say, if there was anything that deserved the title of a well-earned victory, I would say Class B deserved it. I think many of us probably assumed Class B would end up winning, but I would be shocked if no one assumed that, that final moment, that heroic flight, our boy's looking badass, he's charging in. I mean, he literally captured 2 people by himself. I mean, granted, if you consider Momo's leadership and the equipment, it wasn't by himself, but still, it was just like, it felt like there was so many curveballs, and it's actually interesting because this episode, I think, had one of the longer recaps because there was like 2 or 3 minutes and then the opening song played, and then there was flashbacks to like season 1 or 2 with Momo and Todoroki, right? So there was honestly 2/3 of an episode worth of content, but they constantly twisted and turned what we thought was going to occur. Without a doubt, Studio Bones, I think, is taking their time in some of the best ways I've seen them do, especially for a school arc, because there has been points that even as a non-manga reader, I could look at and say, it feels like they're definitely trying to get to a certain point in this arc. While with Season 5, it feels like, no, we're keeping a pretty good pace. I've seen a lot of compliments on the visual directing this time around. There's definitely some interesting talent. I mean, the whole idea with Tokoyami, like flying through those pipes with this blend of 3D with 2D, there's clearly a new vision for My Hero Academia while still staying true to what's made it so good to begin with. And I definitely think there's a level of consistency which I hope carries through the entire season. Because usually what ends up happening with My Hero Academia is there comes a point where there's an arc where there's a section of episodes that do feel a little underwhelming visually because they're simultaneously working on the My Hero Academia movie, right? But so far, I really feel like they understand what they want to do for this season, and there's been a surprising amount of action and interesting shots, so it's already a good sign that we're how many episodes in, and it really doesn't feel like the production has dipped all too much. Now, this episode, in terms of its abilities, it's really interesting to see how in some of the best I've seen, now there's a lot of good superhero stories out there, but I do feel like superheroes for a long time were one of the biggest things that people tried to mimic up until the zombie craze took over, and then everyone tried to do that, and then that got repetitive. But there was a time where everyone and their mother was writing superhero stories, whether it was for TV, animated series, manga, comics, right? And it felt like a lot of the abilities were either a little too cookie cutter or they were just not that interesting. My Hero Academia since Season 1 has had a really good formula of making powers distinct and interesting, and even 90 some odd episodes later, we're showing us a manga author, basically, who can create his speech and kind of bring manga panels to life, whether it's sound effects giving off this ridiculous aura to honestly some pretty frightening atmosphere that what this man's able to do. Or even the idea of mushrooms, right? There's so many ways to take, I think, on paper, an idea that could sound either really interesting, like, his hero costume's literally a manga, right? It's literally a manga for a mask. I mean, that has to be fun. If you mess that up, you're probably a shitty writer. There's no way you don't make someone making speech bubbles come to life not engaging. But if you have something like mushrooms, well, that can be a little more tricky, and it would be very easy for a lot of people to walk away saying, who cares about this girl? I would honestly argue probably the MVP of the episode, given how she was the entire reason, in a pretty devastating way, that their class ended up winning. But with using an ability that by itself may not be the most interesting in a heroic sense, villainous sense, you could just choke everyone you wanted and be A-okay. But combined with all these different abilities, it was really cool to see how they're able to implement abilities that were either really cool at a surface level or kind of whatever on a surface level, and make everyone shine in an equal light. And it's really great to see that it's not just Class A getting their time to shine. The last battle we had, even if they lost, it still felt like both Class A and B equally had moments to show their greatness. The exact same thing happened here. In a certain sense, it was predictable that Class B would end up winning after last week. I do think they covered their tracks enough to make it feel like we probably assumed Tokoyami. I mean, sure, maybe you still had your assumptions as he was chasing, but once he captured it, felt like we were good. But the idea that, he simply made a mistake, that it's a mock battle, so nothing that extreme would happen, that was a mistake, and it kind of cost him. Now, Momo and Kendo were very interesting as well. I really liked the difference in leadership styles and how, even Kendo herself was saying at the end, like, I don't feel like this was a victory given how far she pushed me and even pushed herself. But I like how the whole cannon thing where, like, oh man, she must really like cannons, building that up. And it was never about shooting her or shooting the wall. It was about getting equipment to her allies so that they could finish the job, because she knew that she was just not going to be able to do anything in that situation. A team lead who values the kind of lives and the objectives of her allies more than herself, which is exactly what you want to see from a leader, right? Someone who puts others first before herself. Without a doubt, one of the strongest leader potentials we've seen in this show, and it makes it really, really good for that. I just continue to have a lot of fun with My Hero Academia. It's one of those shows that I generally make the longest videos for when I record. I just really enjoy talking about it, I really enjoy watching it, and I'm really glad we're taking our time with this arc, because it not only lets the smaller characters get chances to shine, it really does give us one last hurrah before probably everything goes to shit, especially with the League of Villains and everything that's going on with Endeavor's side, right? Also not sure if I've really mentioned it at all, but I think the My Hero Academia Season 5 opening has grown on me some of the most out of any of the openings. They've always had good openings, and the soundtrack for My Hero Academia has always invoked the correct emotions, but I really feel like I'm getting more and more interested in both the opening and the ending as the weeks go on. Generally, I kind of fall off after the first couple of listens, and I'm like, well, if I want to listen to it, I can always pick up a YouTube video, right? I can always hear it. Why not just jump into the episode? But My Hero Academia has actually done a pretty good job at making me say, I don't want to skip the opening, I don't want to skip the ending, I enjoy both, and it kind of opens and closes an episode in a really good way. I know they aren't seemingly everyone's favorite opening and ending, and I wouldn't even say it was my favorite from My Hero Academia out of all the seasons, but it's definitely been one of the most memorable and consistent listens I find, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one feeling it about the opening and ending this season for My Hero, but I'm really enjoying it for sure. Let me know your thoughts and feelings, and definitely your favorite quirk in this episode. I feel like it's going to be a toss-up between a comic author, a manga author, or a mushroom, but I mean, I guess we'll see where everyone's fallen down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.